Hello everyone, I'm Giuseppe from DualShockers.com and I'm your host for this fourth episode of our WeebCast. With me, as usual, is my co-host, Emily Hobbs.
Hello, good to see everyone again, or hear them, I guess.
Here? We're not hearing anyone, they are hearing us.
We'll comment with them.
Okay. Well, you're still not hearing them, you're just reading them.
I'm hearing them in my mind's voice.
Yeah. I wonder how your mind voice is. Anyway, sorry for the digression. So if this is the first time you listen to our podcast, you should at least know that at DualShockers we love Japanese games. And it is basically the embodiment of that. We're gonna talk for about an hour about Japanese games, anime, manga, geek culture, and a bit about Japan in general. So, we can get started. And our team today is actually a pretty interesting one. It's gonna be localization. But before we go that, we can talk about one really interesting thing, which is 4, which is our episode number, is an unlucky number in Japan. In fact,
very unlucky.
Yeah, it says sheet, which it reads sheet, which is basically death in Japan. So that's why people were thinking that Sony would have not called the PS4, but they did, and it didn't really work badly for them. So I hope
they're doing great.
Yeah. So let's hope that episode 4 doesn't work so badly for us as well, right?
Hopefully not.
Yeah. So let's get into what we played this week. So what did you play this week, Emily?
Not too much new. Played a little bit of Evil Within 2. Still really liking that. But what I played a lot of was Yakuza 6. I'm at the part, I'm not going to be specific because spoilers and stuff, but I'm at the part where I know who Haruto's dad is, and they're talking about the secret of Okichi.
Spoil.
I'm not saying who it is or whatever, but that's where I'm at. Do you know how far in I am into the game based on that?
I finished it, yes.
No, I mean, but could you tell me how far into the game I am?
That would be a spoiler.
Okay, awesome.
I'll tell you later.
Okay. I'm really enjoying it. I really like. I just really like it. It's a good push towards the finality of Kiryu's story, I guess, since this is the last game that he's going to be the main character in, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aside from
is that like a word, really?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
It is now.
Well, okay. Right.
But one thing that I always find hilarious in the Yakuza games is the idea that people still walk up to and fight Kiryu after 7 technically games. Like, Yakuza 0.
Give me money, you punny little kid.
Know who he is by now. Like, Yakuza 0, I get. He just started out. But Yakuza 1, people should be like, oh, isn't that guy?
But
and by Yakuza 2,
you don't know him, look at him.
Yeah,
he's
look
like
at him.
A beast. He's so buff, and if
Yakuza
you see him, you're
the weirdest.
You're not gonna think, oh, this guy is gonna wreck me if I even just look at him the wrong way, right?
I know, exactly. And the most hilarious thing is that the Yakuza series always has this really uncanny ability to make Japanese characters who just look like dudes, just look like regular people. Except for Kiryu, who looks like a goddamn superhero in a world full of just I looked at a guy and I pointed at him and I told my roommate, doesn't that look like generic Japanese businessman? And she's like, yeah, it does. And then there's just Kiryu next to them and he's just this 6 foot tall, crazy. I just don't get why people will walk up to him and just fight him. Why?
Because
you're gonna lose.
It's a matter of gameplay.
I know. But it's hilarious to me, the world dynamic of it, him.
Wait. Is that the only thing in Yakuza that doesn't make sense to you?
Yakuza is a very strange series, and I am deeply in love with it for its ability to balance, ridiculous shenanigans and things that don't make sense with really serious, dramatic, true crime stories. Always about real estate for some reason.
So I guess that people walking up and trying to beat Kiryu is not that strange in comparison to many other things.
You're right. Every single side quest is just so strange.
Have you already seen that scene? I mean, this is not really a spoiler because it's been shown a million of times and it's not part of the story. Have you seen the scene in which Kiryu, for the first time, goes to do the video chat?
Yes. Oh my god.
He's typing.
This is great. And the whole mini game is you pressing single like keys because he's horrible at typing. It's so funny.
That was also like
I played one of those little live chats, and I was just like, "This is the weirdest thing I've ever done."
Just one, huh?
Yeah, I played just one. It was almost as weird as the phone club thing from Yakuza 0. That was really weird, but I found that hilarious because you could say weird things.
I'll pretend I'll believe you. Okay. So what else do you play?
That's just about it. Like I said, Evil Within 2 and Yakuza 6 have kind of been what I've been plugging away at.
Alrighty.
But what have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing a lot of BattleTech, which is, again, not Japanese, but I finished the review, but I'm still playing it because it's a lot of fun. And there is still a little bit of Japanese because giant robots and like they copied the Japanese things they copied the Japanese giant robots at the beginning. They actually had licensed them. I actually got a correction for what they say in the last podcast. But they actually licensed them, but they licensed them from the wrong company. They actually could not license them. So that's why they went in trouble and to remove them. And there were robots from Macross and other series. The funny thing is that there has been news because they have been sued again by Harmony Gold, which, if you don't know, is like those atrocious perpetrators that created Robotech. Maybe you're too young to know. Are you?
I think I am. Tell me the hatred.
You don't know what Robotech is. Do you know what Macross is?
I don't think I do. I do, yes.
Okay. Robotech is basically a terrible, horrible thing that Harmony Gold created in the US. Basically, in the US, to make a daily series, you needed a certain number of episodes. So Macross did not have enough episodes because they only had 20-something episodes, and they needed like 60 episodes. So basically, they spliced together 3 series: Macross, Southern Cross, and Mospiada, which have nothing to do with each other. They
just stitch them together.
They warped the story to make it look somewhat sensical, and that's Robotech. And that's horrible. That literally ruined one of the best anime series ever, which is Macross. And Harmony Gold sued Airbrain Schemes, which is the creators of BattleTech, over this mecha that they still think, despite the fact that they changed the designs, they still think that they are too close to the original Macross design. The funny thing is that lawsuit has been dismissed with prejudice by the court, which means that it can't be brought back again. So Harmony Gold lost. And yes, I'm so happy. And the thing is that I've seen the documents, and basically the funny thing is that Harmony Gold is so clueless. They actually said that the mecha looked similar, did not even correspond to the ones that they were copied at the beginning. Like they took one mecha that was copied from another mecha and said this mecha is copied from this other mecha. So it had nothing to do with each other. So of course it has been dismissed. Yeah. So, and in any case, that's my semi-Japanese.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Japanese, but the story is so good that it could be Japanese. In any case, and it has giant robots, so yeah, that's Japanese invention.
That's always a plus. Yeah.
In any case, what else I have played? I have played some Schwarzesmarken again. So this is like the prequel of Mavlov, set in East Germany in the 80s, and it's awesome. It's all in Japanese, unfortunately, but I hope they localize it sooner or later. Speaking about localization. Then I played some Final Fantasy XIV as well, because I went back and decorated my new house, which I didn't have time to decorate for about 2 months because I went to Japan and I came back. I had a lot to do and whatever. So basically, I went back and I did my little room. Yeah, like a nice housewife.
House decorating with Giuseppe.
That's relaxing.
It is. I agree.
Housing is the best thing in MMORPGs.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's basically it. I've been playing another game which I can talk about. So And it's not Japanese.
Mystery game. Is it?
Not Japanese.
No, never mind.
Okay. Anime. What about anime? Have you seen something interesting?
Nothing too new for me on blah 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 blah. English I speak in terms of anime.
Really?
Watching Tokyo Ghoul Re still. I was really excited. I saw the Attack on Titan got season 3. It's got a release date, so that'll be July 22nd, I believe. So I'm really excited about that. So I might go back and watch maybe the first 2 seasons and check those out. But I've been really busy with gearing up for finals, so I haven't had a chance to watch too much. Oh, but there is one thing. Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I'm starting to watch the older anime,
how is it?
the 110 episode one.
Yeah.
So I've only watched a couple of episodes, so I can't say, it's the best thing ever. But it is really solid so far. And if you are a fan of just that classic space opera, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's literally the one series I would advise people to watch if they're science fiction fan. The one series. If they had to watch one series only for their whole life, that would be the one.
Yeah. But just from watching the first couple of episodes, I can definitely say it's not for everyone, but if it is for you, it's the best kind of thing for you that you could possibly get. It's really solid so far.
It's slow. I mean, the one flow, between air quotes flow, because for some people like it. I do like it. It's kind of slow in progression.
I don't mind slow that much because you got 110 episodes, so hey. We'll see where it goes. It's not slow
in the filler sense of things. It's slow because it's very detailed, right?
Mm-hmm. Which I don't mind. I love detail and world building. So that's good for me. But I'll keep you updated on how that goes in terms of I'm gonna keep watching it because it looks good so far. But that's about it for anime for me. What about you?
Well, I've been watching the usual series that I've been watching in the past few weeks, which is Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but the new one. 3D Kanojo, Sword Art Online, the new Sword Art Online, which is not bad so far. I will admit that I do miss Kirito. Sorry, people will hate me. You can send your
But that's
hate
the
mail
best
to
part
whatever.
Is that Kirito is.
No, it's not the best part, but the new character is still waiting for becoming interesting, I guess. Then Full Metal Panic is awesome so far. And then I was watching the ones that they mentioned in the past few days. But the one that is really taking off is Golden Kamuy, which is the one I was talking about last week. I just watched the first episode back then. Basically, what it is that, let me just tell you a little more about it because I didn't last week.
Please do.
Basically, it's set in Hokkaido, which is already a pretty unconventional setting. But it's set in Hokkaido just after the Russo-Japanese War, which is just before the First World War, which means it's a very unconventional setting. It's very traditional old Japan, and there is this guy that is a former Japanese soldier, which is basically named Immortal because he's a guy that never gives up and gets wounded a million times and never gets killed. When he takes his clothes off, he has all these scars all over the place. So he's a very hardcore guy, but in a kind of innocent way. He's not a bad guy. He's just a circumstance. He's a Kazuma Kiryu, pretty much.
Yeah, he's Kazuma Kiryu. People just keep fighting me. I don't know why.
Yeah. And basically he learns that there is this treasure hidden in Hokkaido. It was a treasure that belonged to the Ainu, which is this native population of Japan. I don't know if you know about them. They are very different ethnicity from the Japanese, and they are, and it was stolen from them and hidden. And the map for this treasure was tattooed by the person that hid the treasure. He went to jail and he tattooed it on the bodies of the other inmates.
Oh, wow.
But it did so in a way that in order to see the full design, you'd have to actually kill them and skin them.
Jeez.
It's very violent series.
Yeah, he had a very specific goal in mind when he hid that.
So basically, he sets out to find these treasure because he needs money to cure a friend's wife. The friend is dying in the war, and the wife is becoming blind. So it needs to bring him to the U.S. to bring her to the U.S. to get her cured. Finally,
to not be blind anymore.
Finally, the operation and the trip would cost 200 yen. So talking about inflation.
Yeah.
Anyway, and basically what he gets attacked by a bear, because in Hokkaido there are a lot of bears, and he meets this Ainu girl that starts that she actually was the daughter of one of those Ainu that got their treasure stolen. So they set out together to find the treasure. And the very interesting thing is that being in contact with this Ainu girl, you get a ton of information about the Ainu culture that you wouldn't normally hear unless you go to study it. And it's extremely interesting. So there is this small educational aspect on top of the story, which is very good. So I really like it. I'm really interested in seeing how it goes on. I think it's on the almost the 4th episode now. So I'm really interested in it. It's very good. And that's it for anime for me. And yeah, I'm very interested about Attack on Titan as well.
Yeah.
So let's get into our main topic of the day, which is interesting because many people discuss about that, and it's interesting for me because I worked on it. And the topic is localization. I actually did not work in localization of games, but I worked in localization of anime it was basically my first job, and I worked for 6 years in it. That was still like in the early 2000s. So,
Giuseppe Jr.
Yeah, I was very young, but I have some experience, and it was a time in which localization was young, and there was a big conflict between censorship on one side for anime that went on TV, and I worked on home video anime. Back then, when I started, it was still cassettes. It was still VCRs and stuff.
Oh God, yeah. and
then we moved to the DVD towards the end of my career in that environment. But yeah, basically there was this big split between TV anime that was censored, and like all the dialogues were changed, and our company was at the geometrical opposite because we did everything we could to provide as faithful as possible experience to the Japanese. To a fault, the person that taught me to do this job was literally a fanatic about it, even more than me.
Oh, really?
So sometimes he instructed me to put some grammatical constructions that were even unfamiliar it was in Italian, by the way, because I'm Italian. I'm familiar for an Italian, but it was more faithful to the Japanese localization. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but I did because it was instructions, But still, I got in contact with a very different way of doing localization than what was done for TV. Then I moved on to another company because the one I worked on the first time closed because it was it was a difficult time. Like market was shrinking and stuff. And then there I basically started their process of localization because they were doing only manga at the time. They weren't doing anime. And there I could do my own rules pretty much. So I could do a little bit more mediation between the need of being faithful to the Japanese, which still was very important to me, but still trying to put it in a little more enjoyable way for the audience. Because if you have to try to interpret what it said, because it's not really in Italian, in correct Italian, it's kind of difficult, But anyway, that's pretty much my background in the field, just to give some context to what I'm going to say. In any case, so we can talk about localization in games because, anime is, anime is our secondary argument. So it's, right now we can talk about games, and, there are some good examples of localization from Japanese. We're going to focus on Japanese, and there are some bad examples. So let's start from the good, okay?
Okay.
Let's not be too negative. So
Let's
good
not be
example
too
of
negative.
localization lately, and you're pretty familiar with it. Because
I am.
one of the best examples of localization lately for me has been the Yakuza series. The Yakuza series they have done a great job in trying to keep the dialogue as close and faithful to the Japanese as they could. They do deviations because, of course, they're trying to make the dialogue enjoyable in English. There are always going to be deviations in some ways. But they even went as far as doing something that we that were fanatics, we did not dare to do, which is keeping the honorifics in Japanese.
Yeah.
Which is really peculiar, but for me, really good. So what do you think?
I noticed it a lot more in Yakuza 6. They keep a lot of the Japanese words that don't necessarily have an easy correlation to English, you know? And one of the neat things is that on the loading screens, they'll have like Japanese words pop up. Like they had one for itadakimasu.
Yeah.
And I shouted that and my roommate was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "It's a fun thing to say." But it gives you a little explanation of what certain words mean. Awesome. And like the origins of the word Yakuza, that it's a gambling term. And I thought that was really a really neat touch, but I don't mind. I think the,
how was your, I would like to ask you, sorry. How was your first impact with honorifics, like in the game? How did you feel the first time you saw Kiryu-san?
I liked Kiryu-chan more, and how they translated it to, what did they translate? Yeah. They translated it to like Kazi or something in one of the earlier games.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, that was weird. I like Kiryu-chan because Majima's just great. But I think it's really solid for how the series is, like how Kiryu addresses Majima as Aniki because he, you know, respects him and he's this older individual. I think it adds a lot more sort of depth to how characters feel about each other without actually having to say anything, you know?
Exactly.
So I really like it, and I think that a lot of the translation in Yakuza is really good. In Zero and Kiwami, I really love everything Majima says. It's all translated so awesome. I've learned so many new like ways to say things. I think he says everything's going tits up now or something, and I had never heard that, and now I'm saying it all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. Oh no, that's my.
The thing
thoughts.
is, like the interesting thing is that for me, while it's great, and in 6 they actually did a better job than this, I think they kind of went only halfway because there are still some of those honorifics that are not that are just adapted in English, and I think they should have kept all the honorifics in Japanese. If you do some, it's better to do them all. But I have to say, in 6 they did better, much better than in 0 and in Kiwami. So I'm actually looking forward to Kiwami 2 and see what happens, because Kiwami 2 is an interesting thing, which is in common with 0, but 0 was adapted in a way that was not as good as 6 still. So and that's that it's set partly in Osaka. So there is a lot of things in Osaka that cannot be translated because Kansai Ben is very different from Japanese, and translating a person that speaks Kansai Ben, it's very strange. Unless you give them a dialect, but that's not faithful, and that's not that doesn't really work well. Some people try to do it, but it doesn't really work well because another dialect is not really Kansai Ben. It's another dialect. Yeah. And like, for instance,
it's just its own thing.
Yeah,
you know?
Here in Italy, for instance, I've seen some people that did a localization of an anime. It was another company, and they gave people from Osaka the southern accent in Italy, but that doesn't really work well because it's different. It doesn't feel.
It's its own accent.
I'm curious to see, because of course there are people already in Yakuza 6 that speak with Kansai accent, but when you go to Osaka and they speak Kansai Ben, it's gonna be interesting to see how they translate it. I'm very good. Like Sega guys, Richard and the other guy, I don't remember the name, I'm sorry. I challenge you. I mean, I want to see what kind of a good job you're going to do, because so far you delivered. So I'm happy with what you did, but I think you can do even better. And you've been improving consistently from Zero in Kiwami and in Yakuza 6. So I want to see in Kiwami 2 what you guys do. But really, Yakuza for me is the shining example that shows that you do not need to change too much in order for a dialogue to be enjoyable. And this is the excuse that many localization professionals say, oh, if I don't change much, it's not going to be enjoyable. But the Yakuza series is the evidence that what they say is not true. Because it can be kept faithful and still be enjoyable, because the dialogue in Yakuza is super enjoyable. And it's not just the original that is super enjoyable, but the adaptation and the localization is super enjoyable in itself. So you can do it. It's just that you don't want to, because there is two factors in this. Localization that is very faithful to the original, but also enjoyable, and I'm sure the people that work on Yakuza could agree with this, as two challenges. One challenge, which is the most important, is that you need to be humble. As a localization professional, you need to be humble and understand that you're not an author. You're someone that is at the service of the author. And it needs to convey what the author wanted to convey, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this takes humility that not all localization professionals do. Many localization professionals think themselves secondary authors. So they think they can put the creativity in localization, and that is a terrible idea.
Yeah, that's when you get all these weird changes.
Exactly.
And
Maybe because it's full of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually loved when the Final Fantasy XIV localization manager had a panel and also an interview with us that we still have to publish, but we will this week. And since Japanese puns are difficult to translate, we asked them what was the most difficult he ever found in the game, and he told, I don't like puns. I don't like to use puns in translation. I was like, yes, my hero.
Yes.
I mean, it's okay if there is a pun in Japanese, but just adding puns, and they do it a lot. Puns or memes, it's really terrible. Anyway,
it's like the Bakemonogatari series, where it's just full of wordplay and puns, and you're trying to read the subtitles and you're like, I don't know what any of this. This is funny, but I don't know why. But it's just it's very
in that case it's very challenging, definitely. To do an adaptation. But the second challenge you have to do a good localization is that taking translating Japanese in good English, enjoyable English, but still keeping faithful to the original. It's a lot of effort. You have to think about it a lot. So it takes a lot of mental capacity and a lot of effort. Also a little bit of creativity, but it's a creativity at the service of the original, not the creativity for the sake of creativity. So you have to do it, but it takes so much effort that many people don't want to do that effort. They just take the shortcut, and the shortcut is just inventing another joke or another pun that kind of resembles the original. It's not like that, you know? So that's a shortcut. That's a crutch. So good localization like the Yakuza one requires humility to be at the service of the original and not replacing the original just because it's fun. And two, a lot of effort to make it still fun, but also faithful to the original. That is not easy. So many people take shortcuts, right?
Yeah. It's a tough middle ground to get to, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But it's a middle ground that people should aim for. And many don't.
Exactly.
And I think many don't even think to. There are localization teams that I see that they don't even try. So that kind of sucks. And it definitely ruins the enjoyment of of what of the game for me, especially when I like play it in Japanese with Japanese audio and English subtitles, because the disconnect between what's written in the subtitles and the Japanese is so big, so massively big. So let's take an example, a negative example, which is recent. Like, it's not a super negative example, it's still negative, like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You played it, right? What language did you play it in?
I did Japanese with English subtitles.
Okay, good. Same for me. Have you heard anything of the English subtitles, the English dubbing at all?
I did. I didn't like it. I put on Japanese.
I mean, these overblown accents were terrible, first of all. Like,
yeah.
They were really overblown. And I'm okay with a little bit of inflection to give people a different...
Definitely.
That was too much. Like, really too much. For me, it was atrocious.
And we were just talking about localization being all about finding that middle ground. And when you go balls to the wall in a different direction and you go too far, then it's really jarring and it takes you out of the immersion, and it's just not good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact was, first of all, they changed names. Why do you change the names? Oh, but they're obscure. So you change them with like Greek names, because Greek is not obscure for...
Yeah, because everyone
English.
speaks Greek.
Everyone speaks unsigned Greek, right? Or Gaelic. There was Gaelic names. Everyone speaks Gaelic nowadays, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
and Gaelic's definitely not hard to pronounce at all.
Yeah, what makes Gaelic more common and more okay for a Western audience than Japanese?
Yeah.
Like, let's make an example. Like, all change... Japanese names should not be changed, period. There is only one possibility. Like, when I used to work in it, there was only one rule, like, that allowed you to change Japanese names, which is if the Japanese names sound vulgar or like overly ridiculous in the target language, because sometimes Japanese
like if
words,
it sounds like someone dropping the F-bomb every time they say someone's name.
Because for instance, there was my company was working on Tenchi Muyo. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but it's a very old anime.
Okay.
And one of the villains, his name was Kagato. One of the characters, his name was Kagato, which in English would not be a problem, but in Italian, Kagato literally means shut.
Oh.
So yeah, that's not.
So that would be awkward to hear every.
So we changed it to Kayato. Okay.
Yeah.
Try to keep it as close as possible, but still not, since it was kind of people would not like laugh every time and look at it. Like, that's a problem that you have to do a change for, but it's a very small change. We didn't call him Johnny, you know?
Yeah. Hey, it's Frank.
Yeah, exactly. Call him a very similar name, just changed a letter in it. But that's all. There is no reason to change any other name. There is absolutely no justification.
Like, that's something that they did early on with Yakuza 1, going back to Yakuza, but they changed... Didn't they change Kiryu's name and his dad's name?
No, Kiryu's name was was like...
it was his adopted
father.
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know why those were changed. Like,
because they were too similar, and English audiences would get confused.
I guess, but
it's not that bad.
That's not a reason, honestly.
Yeah.
In any case, like, the name that changed, like, Nintendo does that a lot. They change a lot of names, like even in Fire Emblem. I don't know why they change all the names in Fire Emblem. And the original ones are fine. They're not, they don't have anything wrong in the original one. So it's nonsensical, like, it's a nonsensical ingerence of the localization team into the authorship of the original. And that's stupid. I'm sorry, that is stupid. But if you go looking back at, like, if you listen in Japanese and you see and you hear the original name, and you read the English name, that brings you right out of the experience. At that point, it doesn't make sense to even give a Japanese track. Like, and the funny thing is that some names were changed in such, like, some names were just, they changed like the language or something. Like, for instance, the Byakko. Byakko is the tiger, the mythological Japanese tiger or Far Eastern tiger that protects a cardinal direction. So it makes very much sense to change it to to keep Byakko, because that's a very important mythological reference. They changed to Dromark. That I think it's some kind of like Gaelic thing that has something to do with it, but nothing.
Because Western audiences will recognize that more than
Western audiences
Byakko.
will absolutely recognize Dromark. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I know.
such a
all
common
about
word.
this.
Every time I
Yeah.
go to the buy groceries, I'm like, can I
Yeah,
have
every
a
time I go to
Dromark,
the grocery
please?
store. Do you guys have any?
That makes
oh, man.
sense. No sense at all. But that's like Poppy. The original name of Poppy, which is the little character, female character, is like that. I could understand looking at her and wanting, because she looks like a little girl at the beginning.
Hmm.
So I could understand looking at her and wanting to call her Poppy, and that's probably what they thought. But it doesn't make sense. Like, your original name is Hana. And Hana means flower.
That's fine.
So they changed
And
it to
that's
Poppy
even-
because Poppy is a flower, I guess. But Hana is a common name in Japanese. It doesn't have any connotation of a pet name. Some people use it
Yeah.
as a pet name, I'm sure, because every name is used as a pet name. And it doesn't have a intrinsic connotation as a pet name. Poppy, and I know that there is a Poppy written in a different way that is a person's name. It's not very common, and it sounds like a pet name. So basically, they added a connotation to the character that was not there in original.
And ironically, Hana would translate well, at least to English, because Hannah is a very common name. So
Yeah.
people would just see that and be like, oh, Hannah.
That's cool, Hannah.
Even though it's not necessarily right, but still.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that if you play the game, Hana is not a pet. It's more like Tora is the pet. In the end, like, because like superficially you can think that Hana is subservient to Tora, but she's not. It's the other way around. Tora is like completely succubus of, like, completely like
Succubus.
it is like completely like it is a doormat for Hana.
Yeah.
So yeah, that doesn't make sense. But there are many things that don't make sense in the Xenoblade localization. Like, for instance, was that famous scene, and that brings another thing, another argument, which is that in there is one scene in which they need to gather money, and Homura Pyra, in English, Homura, their name is Homura. They decide to change it Pyra, but she says, "Oh, I will do I will do everything to help," and we have this intervention says, "Oh, then it's a strong implication that she will sell her body to do it with," and then there is Rex that bumps in the head. So, because of course he says something perverted, right? The implication was in Japanese was obvious.
Yeah.
And so it got bumped in the head. In the English version, this perverted part has been completely removed. So Rex is just beating someone out of the blue for nothing, and it makes no sense. And this is just the usual Nintendo thing of like watering down the dialogue to avoid any kind of scandalous sexual thing.
And that reminds
just
me.
implied.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of the English translation of Drakengard 1, when they get to the scene where, and I'm not going to go super into spoilers, but a certain character is revealed to have certain feelings for, that was my phone, for a sibling, and that is not translated in the English version. She just kind of looks away, and it's very vague, and it's not really implied. It just sounds like she wants a hug in the English version, and then she kills herself for it. And so when you're playing the English version, you're like, what? What just happened? Where in the Japanese translation, or in the Japanese version with the translation that's proper, it's very
obvious.
Clearly implied. It's very obvious, like, what is being meant, and it's very clear.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where not only is it not a proper translation, but it's also taking away from the story
enjoyment
itself.
In the story, yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
It just makes no sense.
Like this thing of watering down dialogue to avoid certain references, it often changes the characters. It often changes the story. And it doesn't, and then we hear the localization teams that say, oh yeah, but we talked to the original authors and we got their permission. No, you didn't. Because they don't
know what you're talking about.
they may have actually talked to them for some things. Mm-hmm. But first of all, the original authors, most of the Japanese, English is not part of the education of a game developer in Japan at all. So most game developers in Japan do not speak English. And even if they do speak English, they do not understand the depth and the nuance in English. So you can tell them, is this okay? And they will tell you yes. I know because I've been working with them, and I've been working with Japanese mangaka and authors that I was asking them for information about the localization. They just told me yes, because they didn't know really, that they just trusted me. So you will talk to them and they will tell you yes, but that does not mean that they approve of your changes. It just means that they don't understand your changes, and they just trust you because you're an employee of Nintendo or of whatever company, so they trust you to make a good job, and they will tell you yes, but it doesn't mean that they actually approve your changes. And that's the problem, because then we hear, oh yeah, we took the order and they approved it. No, they didn't. And moreover, you can bet whatever you want, no Japanese video game director will ever have the time, or writer or whatever, will ever have the time to read the whole script in English. They will not. So they did not approve the script in English. You talked to them a little, you got them you gave them some vague information, and they told you yes. But that's because they did not know the extent of the changes you were making. Mm-hmm. But
it's hard when you don't speak the language to be nitpicking certain things when you're the original author.
Absolutely.
And
and nitpicking, the other thing is that nitpicking on those things is not part of the job description. So they won't do it. Because in Japanese, there is a very strong culture of not interfering with the work of others. So that's not, there is this metropolitan legend that the Japanese authors are approving the changes is bogus, literally bogus. And I know because I've been there. So I know how they react, I know how they work, and I know how they're busy. They don't have time to read the whole script and understand the depth of the changes that they have made. In a language they don't even understand most of the times.
Yeah, it's hard enough to write something in a language you do understand, let alone go back and approve changes to a different language.
Exactly. Then other examples of this, for instance, like examples that are strange, are the Fire Emblem series is like a minefield of crap. Like literally, it's a field full of shit. Sorry for the wording. Like literally, it's probably one of the worst localization ever made. The whole series, they are terrible. Like that scene in which the two ninjas that talk to each other for half an hour in the original, and then they change it just with dots in English. That goes beyond bad localization.
That's good enough. Just make it dots.
Yeah,
really?
that's literally the English localization team that is ruining a game. And they think they're doing a great job because they think they're authors, but they are not. That's a terrible, terrible way of doing things. Going back to honorifics, though, the way, an example of how honorifics change the perception of how characters interact with each other is the Valkyria Chronicles. And I mean the original Valkyria Chronicles. You played it, right?
I did, but I only played it in English, so I don't necessarily know.
Yeah, but you know how in English, how it was in English. So basically, if you remember, Isara and Welkin, Isara in English calls Welkin Welks, right? Silly little nickname, right?
Yeah.
In the original, Isara called him Nisan. In Japanese, they call him Nisan, which is a very, very respectful way of interacting with your older brother. So basically, this that Nissan had all the respect, but also the familiarity between Isara and Welkin in it, because they were very close. But while being very close, Isara still addressed Welkin with great respect because she looks up to him a lot, right?
Yeah.
She loves him, but she also looks up to him, and this is completely lost in the English translation. Because Whelks is someone you call your dog Whelks.
Okay.
I mean, it certainly don't call someone. And in this case, if they didn't want to use a Nissan, I know that in English is not like perfect. They should just call him brother.
Yeah.
Brother is not very common in English, but since they are in the 1920s or something,
it would be more
very well. In just calling him brother. Brother is still respectful. It can still feel respectful, and it can feel like it can feel well. Like it can feel also affectionate and respectful in that context. So it would still work, even if it's not super familiar. It doesn't always need to be common lowbrow English to be understood. Like for instance, many people criticize the localization of Persona 5. Did you play Persona 5? Yes, right?
Of course.
And have you noticed that some construction of phrases were a little awkward, right?
Yeah, phrases and then pronunciation of names that was clearly not.
Okay, the pronunciation of the names were a little odd. But I'm talking about the phrasing. They actually did a pretty good job, despite the criticism they received, because what they did was preserving certain construction that a Japanese teenager would use in English. And that is actually, if you get used to it, that actually is that adds to the atmosphere. Because Japanese teenagers talk very different from American teenagers. In the way not in the words they use. I'm not talking just the language, but in the way they express themselves. They are very much more respectful, and they are more roundabout in the way they do, especially when they talk to adults. So, in preserving that kind of construction, they actually made a more immersive adaptation. It's not immediately easy to get used to it, but when you do, you get a more authentic experience. So I think that decision was in the right direction. The execution was not perfect.
Yeah.
They went in the right direction, and it's much better than the usual Nintendo localization, like speaking something similar to Persona, Tokyo Mirage Section, #FE. That was terrible.
Talk about a title.
Yeah, talk about the stupidly adapted title, first of all.
Yeah.
But the way they actually did the localization was like terrible. They speak like Americans. They removed their age.
Yeah, there was a whole thing about people were aged up for some reason, or ages were removed.
I don't remember if they removed the age or they just increased it, honestly. But whichever it is, because for some reason they did something immoral for minors that did not have sex. I couldn't understand
they had bikinis on.
The age. I couldn't understand removing the age, like in the extreme case in which it would not get you like a certification at the SRB or whatever, because at the ESRB or like the PEGI, because it's minors in sexual contexts. So that I would understand, just removing it. But and I mean, it's not ideal, but it's something that you have to do to actually get your certification. So there is not much you can do. But in that case, in Tokyo Mirage Sections, there was nothing that actually justified changing the age. Because they were just being idle. Sometimes they were dressed sexy, but they would.
Sometimes they had,
strange.
And they weren't even that scandalous. I mean, the most scandalous thing was maybe a bikini, but even then, it's just a bikini.
They were removed. The bikinis were removed.
Yeah.
Like the the character design was changed. They removed like the pubic bones from the characters because, my God, if you see the pubic bones of a girl, it's terrible.
I know.
Oh my God.
God forbid we see your bra straps.
Yeah, and moreover, like just the idea that, my God, that you have to change to change or remove the age of a person because he's an idol and is in show business. Oh my God, terrible. Like it's a common thing in Japan and even in the US that there are minors in show business.
Yeah, we have way raunchier minors in the US in show business.
I mean, Nintendo, are you gonna censor Anna Montana?
Yeah, really. Oh God.
I don't know.
You get the best. No.
The thing is that, like, and changing the age of a person in Japanese is very problematic, because the life of a person in Japan between when they are teenagers and they get over 18 changes completely. Mm-hmm. So making them that they're not minors anymore. They're not like high school students anymore, or like that changes a lot the interactions they have with people, and the way they like, and it suddenly does not make sense in the context of Japan. So that's a small change, and people say, "Oh, it's just a number." It's not. It's another example of the localization team that decides that they're authors, and that they can do for no reason at all. That they can change things that have been decided by other people, and to those other people that have the right to decide because they are the authors. So it doesn't make the slightest sense. And honestly, Nintendo at the moment, at least for their RPGs, they don't do a terrible job with their Mario games and whatnot.
With their main lines.
But that's because they are already watered down and innocent to begin with. So there is nothing to change. But their JRPGs, they destroy them. Or they ask companies they work with to destroy them. Because for Takumi Reiji Session, it's Atlus that did it. Yeah, but who asked them to? You think that Atlus just
Atlus has done perfectly
to change
good
them by themselves?
Yeah.
Atlus does not do that in localization when they localize their own game. So that doesn't.
They certainly don't
sense.
do it in the Shin Megami Tensei series.
It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, and there are so many examples of this. Of course, the supreme example of crap is
the supremest of the craps
is Ace Attorney, or Gyakuten Saiban for those that want to use the original name.
Objection.
Like, that's shameful, and Capcom has been continuing to do it because now they think they can change it anymore, but they're in
so deep that they can't even, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
They literally removed any reference to Japan.
And it creates this
cultural
really
assassination.
Weird... Yeah.
Eat your hamburgers, Apollo, or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's literally the removal of a culture from a game. That's the worst things you can do in localization, because, God forbid, kids know that there is a Japan.
And the weird thing is it ends up creating this super weird, like...
San Francisco.
Yeah, San Fran Tokyo, where it becomes a meme where you're like, I don't even know where we are. I don't know what these laws are. This is so weird.
Why are they eating onigiri and they're calling something else?
Yeah. They go to a Japanese shrine and they're like, oh, look at this. Isn't it nice?
Yeah, it's like... The thing that makes me rage... And that thing that, like, cultural difference. People talk a lot about diversity. And the funny thing is that the people that talk about diversity normally are the same people, like certain kinds of diversity, of course, like diversity of gender, diversity of color, and whatnot, are the same people that normally defend this kind of localizations that try to remove any Japanese-ness from games. So, gender and sexuality and color diversity is okay for them, is great, but cultural diversity is not. Which makes no sense. Because those same people are the same people, if you see in certain websites that I won't name, are the same people that will defend heavy-handed adaptation like Tokimura Sessions or Fire Emblem and whatnot, that removes any kind of Japanese flavor from the game. So that's massively hypocritical. Thing is that cultural diversity is a value added. People love exotic nowadays, and developers like Exceed, publishers like Exceed, like the many publishers that actually like P-Cube, they try to be very faithful to the original. They have realized that cultural diversity and the exoticism of Japan makes them money because it helps sales. It does not hinder them. We live in a globalized society. People know what Japan is. People like Japan. And I'm not talking
like
just
Japan
about
a lot.
weebs. I'm not talking about the weebs. Just look at travel statistics. Japan is one of the most popular locations that people want to travel. People like to see different cultures.
And it's really starting to become more mainstream because I remember, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, but Kim Kardashian posted something about her hair being inspired by a character from Darling in the Franxx. And that blew up. I think it was Kim. It was one of the Kardashians. I don't pay attention to them. But it was so huge because it's this, really mainstream, really American celebrity. And they're talking about this, not only this anime that's an anime from Japan, but a really weird anime from Japan.
The thing is that... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and it's not something to be ashamed of necessarily anymore, or people make fun of you for liking Japanese culture. I mean, now if you go too far with it and go super nuts, I mean, people might make fun of you for it, but enjoying Japan, enjoying the culture, it's not a weakness, it's a selling point to me, honestly.
Exactly. Just think about Kadokawa Games. Created Root Letter. Have you ever seen that visual novel?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Root Letter is set in a really, really peripheric part of Japan, unknown part of Japan. And it goes really, really, it's almost like a tour guide, honestly.
Oh my God.
It goes really deep in showing you the charm of that place. So it's super Japanese. And the English publisher was P-Cube at the beginning, and then they, for PS4 and PS3, and then Kadokawa Games did it by itself on Steam. They really pushed the idea of this game was super deep into the Japanese culture and into showing you an unknown part of Japan. And these increased their sales. Root Letters sold really well, despite being a pretty good, but very niche visual novel. And visual novels don't really sell gangbusters in the West, but they sell very well because they use Japan and being very close to Japan as a value added, not as a liability. And Japan is not a liability. And there are many localization teams that they use Japan like it was a liability, and that is not good. So I think that localization teams should have like the Yakuza team. Sega is definitely doing a great job in pushing the idea of Japanese game at the moment and being proud that Yakuza is a Japanese game. It's a Japanese game, true, and you are proud of it, and they are selling gangbusters.
Yeah, it's doing great. I mean, 0 and 1 did great. 6, I don't know how it's doing. 6 was
second ranked after God of War in...
so it's doing great.
In the UK. On its launch week. So they're doing great by exploiting the Japaneseness of, there are a ton of weeb around.
Yeah, and it's just a fun game series. I mean, and you can learn a lot about Japan from it.
There are a ton of weeb, otaku, anime fan, however you want to call them, sell to them. And even the people that are not weeb or otaku or whatever, there are so many people that are interested in Japan because it's a exotic and interesting location.
Yeah, it's neat. It's got a lot of cool stuff.
Exactly. So people like to do that. Look at how many people watched the Last Samurai. Let's not talk about insulting that movie was for any other reason. But people loved it because it had a lot of Japanese culture. It was very, weird at that, Japanese culture, but still people didn't know that.
But it gave you a taste, at least. Yeah,
and they loved it.
It's like a gateway drug.
Absolutely.
To weebness.
Yeah, exactly. So Japanese flavor is a value added publishers should use it. Just look at, last example, it's not a Japanese game. Look at, Ghost of Tsushima. The one that, the game that Sucker Punch is doing at the moment. Mm-hmm. They're pushing all the kind of Japanese flavor they can into the game. And when they revealed it, people went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Japanese flavor was not a liability. And then we had Pacter that said, oh yeah, it's Japanese, it's set in Japan, so it won't sell well. Well, let's see, Pacter. Let's see if it doesn't sell well. I'm willing to bet that this sells gangbusters because it's a Sony game, it's a great Sony game, and it will sell. And the Japanese flavor will actually add to sales. It will not detract from sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have the examples of localizations that never came. Which is like Valkyria 3, for instance, Valkyria Chronicles 3. Sega, you thought we forgot about it, Sega, didn't you? Well, we didn't. We're still waiting for Valkyria Chronicles 3. So, since we are bringing Valkyria Chronicles 4, and you're bringing Valkyria Chronicles 1 to the Switch, maybe you should think bringing Valkyria Chronicles 3 as well to the West. I mean, there are fan translations out there.
Mm-hmm.
Just buy them. They're not super good, but we have seen worse from you. So just buy the translation of the authors and put it on the game.
One of the weirdest examples of that, of a game not coming west, for me, is a game called Metal Wolf Chaos. And I don't know, do you know Metal Wolf Chaos?
Actually, no.
So it's a mecha game, essentially. And it is set in the US, and it is entirely in English with Japanese subtitles.
Oh.
100% in English with Japanese subtitles. The text is Japanese.
For Xbox.
But yeah, I think so. And it's super expensive if you want to
from
buy it.
software.
But it's And they just never released it in the West, even though the only thing they would have to do is remove the Japanese subtitles and maybe change some of the menus so that it was in English.
Well, if you think
it was entirely in English.
If you think I'm just more modern. The funny thing, this is a case in which the localization exists, just hasn't been imported.
It's there, yeah.
The funny thing is like Grand Blue Fantasy by Cygames, which is probably the best mobile RPG out there. It's in English. I mean, it's in Japanese, but it has English localization. If you go through the bother of making an English a Japanese account, you can play it fully in English. But it's never been officially released in the West. Even if I think there may be some, because they're coming to Anime Expo and they're bringing it. Maybe they announce the localization. Like a release. I don't know. But at the moment, the game is not available in the US. You have to go through loopholes to play it.
Yeah. Those examples are the most jarring to me. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Valkyria Chronicles 3. We still remember Sega. We still want it.
Never
Give it
forget.
to us. You want us
Everyone
to support
start a
you?
hashtag on Twitter.
I mean, Sega's been doing great lately. They announced Shenmue. They announced they're gonna bring back the Sakura Wars series. So maybe it's time to bring Valkyria Chronicles 3 as well, Sega. Please. Okay.
It's the Fist of the North Star style Yakuza, not Yakuza game, but it's in the style of Yakuza. Is that coming out to the West? Do you know?
They didn't announce it yet. I'm scared, honestly.
Because I know a guy a friend of mine who imported a Japanese copy and is playing it, and he loves it because he's a huge fan.
I have it too.
So
and
I'm
it's awesome.
hoping that it will, come west, but you never know.
Yeah, but the Yakuza spin-off has a history of not coming. In anime, sometimes they have weird rights, so I'm scared that they won't bring up. Like they didn't bring Yakuza Ishin.
Yeah, that was the Edo period one, right?
That was awesome, by the way. It was a great game.
Was it?
Yeah,
okay.
It was awesome. And
I saw the karaoke of it, and I was like, that's great.
Yeah, and Okutoka Gotoku is also great. It's even better Yakuza 0 for me. Because I really love the Okutoka no Ken series. So I am really scared they're not going to bring it well. But Sega's doing well. So I'm thinking that the problem, if they don't bring it well, the problem is going to be licensing for anime. I hope
that's true.
It's not. I hope, really hope that when then after they get closer to the release of Yakuza Kiwami 2, they announce that as well. Because I would be heartbroken if they don't. Literally heartbroken.
I agree.
Well, that's pretty much it for localization, unless you have something to add.
I would just add that, like, I get that it can be really hard to localize things, especially from a language like Japanese to Western languages to English, because there's a lot of differences between them and there's a lot of words that don't come over and it takes a lot of work. But if you don't put in the work, then it ends up being really jarring to the player. And I know I'm not the only one who's had this experience, but you might be playing a game or watching an anime and it might have English subtitles. And from watching and playing a lot of anime and games that are in Japanese, I don't speak Japanese, but I've picked up enough that I can kind of understand what people are saying most of the time.
It's different.
And and one time I remember, it was very recent. I don't remember what game it was, but I was playing a game and I was like not even really looking. I was just kind of offhandedly looking at the subtitles and listening to what the person was saying because they were using very common phrases, so I didn't really have to pay too much attention. And then they said something and I looked up and then my roommate looked at me because I had this really confused look on my face and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "That's not what they said at all."
Yeah. Well, there is this trend nowadays that many games they don't even get voice acting. And I understand that people are unhappy because the people that don't care for Japanese, but not having a voice acting at all and just having a Japanese track not only increases immersion, and for many people, but also lowers the cost of bringing a game west a lot. So for smaller games that don't have that big budget, I'm like, please bring it west. I don't care about the English voice acting. Don't put it in. Yeah. Give me the Japanese track and English subtitles, and I'm great. I'm fine.
I mean, look at Yakuza. Again, going back to that. That's entirely in Japanese. That's super Japanese.
Yeah, that's fine. And it's entirely enjoyable, right?
Yeah. I mean, it might be a barrier to certain people, but to the majority of audience, I think you're going to get...
It is a barrier that can be overcome, right?
Yeah, it definitely. I mean,
and
it's not that...
when you do overcome it, it rewards you, according to me.
It's great for learning to read faster.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's get into the news.
Alrighty.
So, first news. God Eater 3 got the first look at the female character. So, the default female character, because of course you can customize it, however. How does she look? You're a lady, so tell me.
I think she looks good. Honestly, normally I play as male characters when I play games. But I think she looks fine. What do you think?
All right. I like her. I normally play males, but I like her. I like the way
My
she
philosophy in games is that especially in longer games, is that if I'm going to be playing a game that I'm going to be playing for like 20, 30, 40, 50 hours, I don't want to look at my own. Yeah, I don't want to look at my own butt. I want to look at the pretty boy that I've made's butt, and that's it.
That sounds like a mansplaining.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Mansplaining with Emily. Come to my new podcast now.
Well, normally that's the excuse that guys pull up.
Hey man, if a guy wants to play as a girl, I don't care. I get it.
Well, Emily is a point of contact. Like he's a male with a skirt.
I get called that sometimes.
Oh, really?
But yeah, I think she's good. But again, God Eater has character customization, so it's not
you can do whatever you want. Yeah,
a huge deal.
By tomorrow, actually, but by when this podcast will be out, there will be more gameplay out, probably showing this female character in action more, because tomorrow morning there is tomorrow morning will be today morning for you guys listening to this. Monday morning there will be a live stream from a preview event in Japan. and will show a lot of the game. Maybe they also announced their release date or something. I'm not sure, but they're gonna show a lot of the game. So there's going to be gameplay on the site tomorrow. Definitely, you're gonna see it. So next name, Nintendo news. There's been a lot of Nintendo news and Sony news from the financials and whatnot. Lots of consoles sold for bot companies because they've got it's financial season. They're both doing great. Nintendo though, they announced a partnership with Cygames, which is the developer of Grand Blue Fantasy, the game that was talking before, and they're going to do this this mobile JRPG named Dragalia Lost. So it's interesting because Cygames is a very good company. I love their games. And Nintendo is going to publish their game on mobile. It's going to come to the West. It's already decided. I'm not sure of the quality of the game because it doesn't seem as good as Grand Blue Fantasy, but I'm curious. So I'm pretty curious about it.
And it's a mobile game, so it's always
it's a time waster. So it's probably not going to be too much of a like. It will not take too much time to play, but I'm gonna try it.
Hey, it might have dragons in it. I'm down.
So there's gone a lot of like sales around for the Golden Week. PlayStation has a couple for both in Europe and in North America. And it's Golden Week in Japan. It started today. And so Japanese people have a lot of days off until, I think it's May 5th. I may be wrong, but it's May 5th or May 5th-ish. And so they have a lot of days off. So this means that Japanese news are going to be
May 6th.
Sparse in this week because with Golden Week, people don't go to work.
Everyone's on vacation, yeah.
Unless there are like press releases that are scheduled, we won't get many Japanese news from tomorrow on. So treasure the ones you get.
Treasure this moment. But yeah, they essentially get a bunch of holidays like right back to back, and that's Golden Week, and I'm like, that's great.
I'm envying them a lot. I don't get days off at all because DualShockers need to have someone that is always there. Well, my last full day off was 8 years ago.
Well, that just goes to show how much more you have in common with Japan.
Yeah, they have Golden Week. I don't.
They have Golden Week, and that's it.
No, they have a lot of vacations actually in Japan. There's a lot of national vacations. And
but
stuff.
isn't overworking one of the leading causes of death over there?
True. Anyway, last news for the week: Shining Resonance Refrain, which is the remasters on PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and PC, has a release date now in the West, which is July 10th. It's going to be a nice summer for us. Personally, I'm a very big fan of Tony Taka's character design. So I'm really looking forward to finally getting a Shining game with his character design in the West. I know there are people that are fans of the old Shining character design, and so they hate Tony Taka, but they're terrible, and they're terrible people because Tony Taka's great.
You heard it here first.
Have you seen Shining Resonance Refrain?
I haven't played anything from the series, but I have seen some of the character designs and the look, and I'm with you in that camp. I really like the designs of the characters.
Well, of course you haven't played anything because no games of those series came to the West since ever.
Exactly, yeah.
So finally,
make it easy on you.
This is another reason that makes me like Sega nowadays because they're bringing almost everything to the West.
And
it makes me happy.
Yeah.
Even series that have not come to the West lately, like Shining Resonance, that is what makes me hope that they will finally see the light and bring Valkyria Chronicles 3 in some form in the West. I really hope so. I lost hope completely from Phantasy Star Online 2. That is completely lost hope.
Yeah, you should probably give up on that.
Yeah.
But maybe one day you'll be pleasantly surprised.
No.
Probably not. Probably not. But,
Yeah. Well, that's it for this week because there wasn't a super big week for Japanese news, I guess.
Yeah, like we said, everyone's going to be going on vacation here. So.
Yeah, I'm envying them a lot. I want to go to Okinawa or something.
I mean, you can go. It's just you got to get some money and
Yeah,
time.
DualShock is not paying me to go to Okinawa. It's a miracle that he sent me to Tokyo. So, no Okinawa.
Do you want to start a
for me.
Kickstarter to send you back to Japan?
Patreon. Like, please support my visits to Okinawa. Honestly, the funny thing is that I haven't gone outside of Tokyo much in Japan because I never had the time. Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
I went to a couple places. I went to Osaka, but always like 1 day trip and really quick for work. You know? I never really went to Kyoto to just sightsee.
To just hang out.
Yeah, and it's just work, which I'm happy and blessed that I'm paid to go to Japan, you know? Yeah. That's something that I absolutely will never complain in my life, and that's the biggest perk of my job probably. But my next time is going to be for Tokyo Game Show. So it's going to be in September. I can't wait. I'm really missing. I've been back from Japan for a month, and I'm already missing.
Oh no, you poor thing! Only a month.
Yeah, I'm really missing it like hell. I've been considering actually moving lately for a while.
You're talking about teaching English over there.
Yeah, well, teaching is a second job. Yeah, it's a part-time job because living in Japan is costly, so I would have to work a little more. But English teaching is easy to get for Westerner there, so it could be a good idea. I don't know yet, but I've been thinking about moving. But for now, next time in Japan is going to be September. So far, I miss it. I spend my time eating cup noodles just to remind myself of Japan.
Oh my god.
They're great.
They are good. They are very good.
I mean,
As
they're
a college
not
student,
healthy
they're my
at all.
primary diet.
Sorry?
As a college student, it's my primary diet.
Really? You're joking.
It's that and there's an udon soup that I can get that I can cook. That's really good.
Is it healthy? Because cup noodles are not really healthy.
It's healthier than cup noodles. I don't know how healthy it is. Yeah.
At least better than cup noodles. Yeah, you can't have cup noodles every day. That would be terrible.
Yeah, no.
The worst thing that you can do to yourself, and some people do it, when they go to Japan, they eat ramen every day. That's literally suicide.
That's not great for you.
That's literally suicide. And I know some people, you can eat ramen. There are two ways to eat ramen. You eat everything like I do, or you leave the soup there. But even if you leave the soup there, it's still not healthy to eat it every day.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a waste and not nice to the cook as well, not just to leave it there. So yeah, just don't eat it every day. Just eat it sometimes, but there is so many different things to eat in Japan. But eat all of it because it's better, and the soup is the best thing.
They do have really good soup.
Oh yeah, you ever been in Japan, Emily?
I haven't been to Japan, but I've been to a lot of Japanese steakhouses.
Well, that's not the same thing. Well,
I know, but it's as close as I'm gonna get right now.
Yeah.
Let me live the
sometimes
dream,
we're gonna have to bring you for Tokyo Game Show or something.
There you go.
When we have a lot more listeners and we can afford it. So people tell your friends about our podcast, our WeebCast, because we need to pay Emily's trip to Japan.
Everyone support Emily's dream to go to Japan.
Let's do a Patreon. Sponsor Emily's trip to Japan.
Sponsor me. I will accept sponsorships and bribes.
Bribes?
Yes. I told a professor the other day I would accept bribes, and he just laughed at me.
For what?
Good
the
reviews.
professor.
Good reviews on Rate My Professor and on the
you review your professor?
Yeah, we do. They give out end of the year reviews, and you review the class and the professor, and it doesn't matter if they're tenure, but if they're adjunct, they can actually make.
Now
a huge
looking forward to
difference.
your first review in DualShocker.
Yeah, that'll probably be coming up eventually.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah. We still know what it is.
Don't make it sound like I'm never going to get to review some.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, we were thinking to give you Steins Gate 0, but we realized that it's just a port with no change from the console version, and we already have a review for that. So that's
true.
That's not probably gonna work. I'm sorry.
Just give me the Dark Souls remaster.
That's the same thing.
I know, but I just want to play Dark Souls some more.
All right. Well, that's it for today, guys. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. And as usual, please like and subscribe if you liked what you heard. And sorry for rambling a lot. Today we actually went a little longer than usual because localization was a big topic. But still, thanks for listening. And if you tell your friends about us, we're really weeb and we love Japan. And if you do, we're probably going to enjoy at least a bit of what we do. So thanks again. And I was Giuseppe Nelva from DualShockers. And
I'm Emily, also from DualShockers.
So bye, everyone.
See ya.